Hello, friends. Today's story is about King Janak and the wise disciple. Several centuries ago, the ancient kingdom of Mithila was ruled by the great king Janak. He was also known as the father of Sita, wife of Rama, the fabled prince of Ayodhya, who is even today worshipped by millions in India. Janak was supremely wise king, revered for instead of conquering other kingdoms. As a consequence of this internal victory, all of his mind's latent power had not only been awakened but functioned at their peak. Janak's supreme accomplishment was that he had completely overcome involvement in his life. That is why he was also addressed as Videha or non involved man. He was totally detached from people as well as objects. In fact, he remained absolutely unperturbed even when his beloved daughter Sita was forced to spend 14 years in a forest in exile and was subsequently abducted by Ravana. He was of the firm opinion that a person's life and his karma would take its own course. Since Janak had completely overcome all kinds of involvement, word of his great wisdom spread far and wide. Many notable scholars, hermits, and sages of the time considered him to be their idol. Interestingly, since King Janak always remained uninvolved with any object or person, he did not need to hold on to renounce anything. Therefore, even one gaining wisdom, he neither thought of forsaking his palace nor did he change his routine. He did not feel the need to do so. Another special trait of King Janak's personality was that he was a connoisseur of alcohol and dance. There were several occasions when late in the evening his palace resonated with the sound of music combined with performance by dancers and free flowing alcohol. He lived in style, and just like his wisdom, his lifestyle was passion, were also the topic of animated discussions in and around Mithila. Far from Janak's kingdom, in another ancient city, there lived a great guru who helped disciples flocking to his ashram in hordes from far flung places to gain wisdom. One of the disciples was a young man who had become a cause of great concern to his guru. He had been training this disciple for a long time, but in spite of all the guru's attempts, the disciple was unable to detach himself from involvement. Even though he was keen and willing to, he had left his own home and was staying at the Guru's ashram, but would often feel homesick. But the Guru was not one to give up easily and was determined to help the student overcome his involvement with his family. But when all attempts proved futile, the Guru finally instructed the disciple to approach King Janaka and seek wisdom from him. On hearing this, the disciple was flustered. He had innumerable account of King's Janak lavish indulgence. He thought, Janaka himself is in need of wisdom. How can he impart it to me? But he could not disobey his guru's instruction, so he reluctantly set out on his journey, carrying with a pair of clothes and a letter addressed to King Janak from his guru. Throughout the journey, all that he thought about was his meeting with the king. He could still not come to terms with the fact that a man like Janak could impact wisdom to him. In complete control of his ego, he thought, what wisdom can Janak impart to me? In fact, I will put him in his place. I swear I'll make him give up his passion for dance and alcohol. In this way, I will not only free my guru from his delusions regarding Janak, but I will also prove to him that I am quite wise. Basking in the inflated ego, the disciple finally reached King Janak's palace. His guru was a highly revered person in Mithila's corridors of power. So, the moment he showed his letter, the disciple was immediately ushered into Janak's court. After reading the letter the disciple had brought, King Janak looked at him and immediately understood what had to be done. He ordered the court official to arrange for the disciple's stay in one of the palace rooms and asked the disciple to meet him in the evening after some rest. It was an indication that the spiritual discussions would take place in the evening. The egoistic disciple became afflicted with self righteousness and seeing King Janak palace and splendor. He became even more resolute that he would change his teacher's opinion about Janak, and his thought only added in his smugness. Actually, it was not entirely his fault, for most Sikhs and ascetics in India are under the delusion that religion only talks about renunciation, sacrifice. Women are anathema to those who possesses such a mindset, and they live at odds with their life itself. This disciple too was no different from others of this breed. So, considering this definition of religion, it was natural for him to be filled with self righteousness. The disciple, however, could do little but wait patiently for an audience with the king. When the last ray of the sun had faded away and dusk had cast its long shadow, the disciple was ushered into the entertainment chamber of King Janak. As usual, the king was enjoying the performance of dancers and singers. Janak offered the disciple a seat beside him and asked him to enjoy the performance. But the disciple considered such indulgence a sin, so he could not sit for long and requested the king to grant him audience the next morning. Agreeing to his request, Janak asked him to come to his chamber in the wee hours of the morning. Seeing the disciple hasten out of the chamber, Janak smiled and thought, if he really was not found, then why did he rush out like this? His scurrying out in a hurry indicates that this disciple was in some way influenced by these acts of entertainment. Janaka was surprised at the disciple's involvement with music and dance, which had made him scamper away in such haste. Spending a restless night in the huge chamber, the disciple waited impatiently for the night to end. At the break of dawn, the disciple entered the king's chamber, relaxing in his royal bed. King Janak invited the disciple to sit peacefully by his side for a few moments. However, the disciple became weary of the king's lifestyle within just a day. He requested him, Your Majesty, my Guru has sent me to seek wisdom from you. Therefore, kindly impart it to me so that I can head back to the ashram. Luxury of your palace is making an ascetic like me feel uneasy. Looking straight into his eyes, King Janak replied, All right, I will impart my wisdom to you, but first let us go and bath. There is a beautiful natural pond behind the palace. Let us go there for a swim. After that, I'll definitely impart wisdom to you. The disciple contemplated for a while. There is nothing wrong with taking a dip in a natural pond. If it had been a swimming pool instead, then I would have had to think about it because a pool would have been a luxury. After all, what does an ascetic have to do with luxury? So, having convinced himself thus, he left with the king. Before heading out, King Janaka called his journal and gave him some instructions. The king then proceeded towards the pond along with the disciple and started swimming in the cool water. Meanwhile, not a word had been exchanged between the two. But even while both were swimming silently, each immersed in his own thoughts, there was a marked difference in their state of mind. While King Janak was enjoying his bath, the disciple, on the other hand, was anxious to finish his bath quickly. As he was swimming, his gaze suddenly fell on the palace, and the blood drained from his face. The King Janak majestic place had good fire, and the flames were rapidly engulfing part of it. Deeply shaken by the sight, the disciple looked at the king, who looked relaxed and was luxuriating in the clear water of the pond. He shouted in nervousness, "King Janak, your palace is on fire, and by mistake I have left my clothes in there." The king did not respond. Instead, he continued to be engrossed in enjoying his bath, letting the cool water of the pond wash over him. The disciple was dumbfounded. He also realized that even while his grand palace was burning, the king continued to enjoy his bath, whereas he was so anxious to save his single set of clothes. The moment his realization hit him, the biggest obstacle to this process, the tendency to become involved, was removed. He had finally gained the wisdom from his guru had been sent him to attain. He realized that the value of an object, its quantity, or the interest of a person in it is of no consequence. What really matters is whether a person is involved with an object or not. If he is, then neither will he be able to enjoy it completely, nor will he be able to bear the sorrow of losing it. The disciple was also trapped in the vortex of involvement with worldly objects. Hence, he was unable to enjoy his swim and also had to endure the pain of losing his clothes in the fire. Moral of the story: the disciple was liberated from his involvement because he had met a wise king like Janak. As for us, we will have to take inspiration from this story and liberate ourselves from involvement. Actually, a person's possessiveness or his activity, occupation, or vocation have nothing to do with the height of his mind or life. That is because the root cause of man's sorrows does not lie in his actions, it lies in the extent of his involvement with his actions. So, if you can do something or enjoy something without involvement with it, then you can indulge in any kind of activity and enjoy anything you wish to. It will never lead to pain or sorrow. And when there is no sorrow in your life, then you are not a sinner. You will not need to perform pious deeds to wash away your sins. You are aware that the entire world is engaged in extremely pious deeds but is still suffering from pain and sorrow. Now, such people may be religious according to their own definition of religion, but according to nature's definition, they are anything but pious. Thank you.